This meeting. Recording in progress.
Hey Stephanie, there's probably gonna be some dead space because we still got quite a few that are not coming. And I think Andy's fixing us taking care of something, so you might have a little bit of dead space on the recording for just a few minutes.
Getting some technical issues fixed.
These things are in good shape.
Oh yeah, and he's on my foot.
What's wrong?
Yesterday I had my boots on, he'd get up on my foot and then slide off, it was uncomfortable. I've got my tennis little, just comfortable shoes on, so he can actually get on my foot and it's comfortable. So he's gonna go to the plane ready. Hopefully the way there's a seat next to me, so I'm not, won't run to myself.
In good shape.
So we're right back. Just gonna get camera one, too, just make sure everyone's fixing it up.
Okay. Yeah, Cora. It's not that kind of meeting.
Alright.
So are they gonna be able to see me at all on the screen, or is it just the presentation?
I can move it to the presentation for the in-person audience. And then for the virtual audience, I'm just moving it to camera 3 there, so they'll be able to see
Okay.
the screen. When you're ready to go.
Alright, so
We
still waiting on
Yeah,
folks.
whatever
Let's
you-
give them
whatever.
a few more minutes.
Sure.
I know Jonathan said he would come straight here after his meeting.
Okay, that's where Russell's at.
Yeah,
He said most of the elected officials in Waco, that's where they would be.
and I think Judge Elliott said he's coming after
After that,
that, yeah.
Most of the elected officials are coming to eat together.
well, yeah, it's dinner at the mayor, probably wants to mayor.
Oh, okay.
You've got Zoom up on your computer. So you can tell me if anything funky's going on.
Yeah.
Just keep.
So this is what everyone sees.
Okay.
Until you get that.
Okay.
So that's how it appears.
Okay.
we're not waiting for everyone, or are we?
Just
Are we
waiting
waiting for,
for more. I mean, I don't know that we're waiting on everybody, but waiting for more, yeah.
okay, so we're ready to start whenever they're ready?
Yeah.
Okay,
I
so whenever y'all are ready.
Okay. Well, I think we're gonna have a few people trickling in, coming from another meeting, but, we can go ahead and get started, and hopefully they'll get here before the activity portion of the meeting. So, to introduce myself, my name's Kathy Chambers, I'm with Moore and Associates, and we've been hard at work on the Regional Public Transportation Coordination Plan over the last few months. We've delivered 2 technical memos, which we'll hit the highlights of today. Hopefully you've all had a chance to look at those, and if you haven't, I hope you'll take some time to look at those, sometime after the meeting. But we're gonna, like I said, walk through the highlights of those, and then we've got a couple of activities planned. One of them is gonna be an interactive polling activity, so you'll need a phone or computer if you're going to participate in the polling activity. Alright, so we'll start off with a very brief review of technical memo number 1. This was the memo that captured information about the public engagement and outreach that we conducted at the end of, during the fall of last year. This was 2 sets of outreach. One was to stakeholders, one was to the community at large. We'll touch on each of those efforts. For the stakeholders, we sent out a very broad email asking folks to participate, and we received survey responses from 91 entities throughout the project area. And let me tell you, that's a really good number for a project like this. I've done other projects where we get maybe a third of that. So 91 entities, and there were actually more responses than that because we did have some duplicates from some of the stakeholders, which we never mind because different people at an organization see different needs. And so we're always happy to hear from multiple people at an organization. So the greatest representation was from those serving seniors, low-income individuals, and adults with a disability. That's not to say that other target populations were not included because they were all represented. We just had the greatest response from organizations serving these groups. So the key issues that the stakeholders identified included a lack of capacity for rural trips, long wait or travel times, limits on insurance transportation, where the insurance says, well, you can maybe take four trips per month, which is essentially 2 round trips a month. And then a general lack of knowledge about available services and how to use them. So that's what the stakeholders said. We also went out to the community, and we approached the community at large because while we have targeted populations for this project, we don't always know who those people are. So what we did is we focused on areas where we could reach those targeted populations. Veterans one-stop luncheon, senior centers, food pantries, things of that nature, where we knew that we could be reaching members of the target populations. But we also kept it broad because, like I said, we don't know who those members always are. So we did a community survey where we received responses from 262 individuals, and we conducted 13 pop-up events throughout the project area. Now these pop-up events, we would go and we would spend between 45 minutes and 2 hours in a location generally. We would talk to folks, we would have them complete a survey, give out information about the project, give out transit information because some of them just weren't aware of things. Some of the common transportation barriers we heard from members of the community included a lack of access to transportation, a lack of knowledge about available services, and service not being available when individuals need to travel, which in some ways mirrors what we heard from the stakeholders as well. Trips to access health care were the most significant challenge. And that's actually not really surprising, because one of the things we hear from folks is they're comfortable driving in their own community, but they don't want to drive into the urban area. They're not comfortable navigating the congestion and the traffic in Waco, for example. And so that's what the trips, if they're coming into Waco for healthcare, they're looking for somebody else to drive them. And so it makes sense that, yes, I can get to the grocery store, but I can't get to my specialist in Waco. So that's kind of where we are on that. So technical memo 2 was our existing conditions report. And so we did a lot of background assessments on this. The first is a geographic area assessment. We reviewed, just where the county and the project area is located. We looked at key trip generators in each county. We looked at commute characteristics. Someone had asked, after looking at technical memo 2, if the mileages given in technical memo 2 were one way or round trip, and they are one way. So for each county, we looked at, how many people have a less than 10-mile commute versus like a 50 or more mile commute to get to work. We also showed who was going outside of the county or outside of the project area. So there was a question of why is this information important, but I think it is important to see, we have some people going to Dallas to go to work. We don't know that they go every day, but this is specific to a commute, not telework, I believe. So hopefully that answers that question. The other thing we did a demographic area assessment where we looked at the demographics of each county. This is where we looked at the percentage of the population that was a youth, a senior, someone with a disability, a zero-car household, things of that nature, living in poverty. And what that does is it gives us an assessment of latent demand for transportation, because if you have somebody who is a senior or low income, they may be a lot more likely to need transit or another kind of transportation service than somebody who is a working age adult that is employed and lives well above the poverty line and has 2 cars at home. The third thing we did in here was a transportation services assessment. This is where we use the information provided through the transportation provider survey that we sent out to both the public transportation providers as well as private and nonprofit transportation providers. So the information they provided is used in that transportation services assessment. We also included other operators that we may not have gotten a response from using publicly available information from the internet, from their own websites, things of that nature. So finally, we used the information from both memos to do a transportation needs and gaps analysis. So we prepared a summary of the transportation needs that came out of the public engagement process. And so we included that in technical memo 2 and then dove into it a little bit more. One of the things we did was a transit needs index, which uses demographic data to identify census tracts where those latent transportation needs are more pronounced. And then we looked at the high transit need and very high transit need census tracts to compare those to existing transportation services. And what we generally found with that is that most of those areas that are rated as high transit need or very high transit need, they actually do have transit service. I believe in almost all of them. Those that are in the rural counties, of course, are covered by Blue Transit. It does not mean that they can necessarily get a trip anytime they want to, but the service is there. And so we summarized the transportation needs and gaps, and that's one of the things we're going to look at today, because we're going to go through those transportation needs and we're going to prioritize them. So any questions so far? It's kind of weird because I can't see the folks on Zoom. I can just see the folks in the room, but if you have a question, there we go. Okay. Does anybody have any questions at this point before we get started on the needs prioritization? Okay. All right. So if we could get the screen back up? Alright. So this is gonna be our little interactive activity here. So when you got your agenda, if you look at the second page, there was a list of needs that we're gonna prioritize. But we're gonna do it online so we can see, how people are voting. That also lets us download the results of this and keep that for when we're working on the next portion of the project. So if you'll visit www.menti.com, that's M-E-N-T-I. Once you get to that site on your phone or your computer, there's a code to enter, which is 65911689. And it's up on the screen as well. So once we get into here, we're going to rank each need as high, medium, or low priority. We're not ranking them against each other. We're just ranking each one as a standalone need. And don't submit your ranking until you're sure. We are going to read through each one, and I'll give you an example of what each one might look like or what it might impact. But once you've already submitted your response, you can't change it. And make sure once you do log in a response that you hit submit. And then once we're done with this, all the responses will be tabulated, and then I'm going to go back and I'm going to calculate a mean rating, which will give it a number. And so then we can compare those numbers and see how each of the needs rate. And I'll have that sent to Misty and wrapped in the next week or so, and they can distribute it. All right, so here we go. So the first need on the list is greater service capacity for intra and inter-county trips within the primary service area within the 5 rural counties. So the primary service area is the 5 rural counties. And we're talking about trips within a county and trips between counties within that service area. What this might look like if somebody's living in Hillsborough and they need to travel to work at Buc-ee's several times a week. So they're making a trip within Hill County. All right, so we've got 4 people locked in so far. We have 4 that have not provided an answer yet. All right, we have 8 out of 8. And so looks like 3/4 of folks said this was a high need, and 1/4 said it was a medium. And you know what? If all of these come through as high needs, we'll deal with that. Just vote what you think it is. All right, our next one is greater service capacity for inter-county trips outside of the primary service area within the 5 rural counties. So this is going from the 5 rural counties to the surrounding counties. The counties that are in the secondary service area. If you ever looked at a blue transit brochure, you see a map that has dark blue and light blue. So these are the light blue counties. So this looks like somebody from Freestone County who needs to travel to Palestine in Anderson County for health care. So what this does is it increases the likelihood that they would be able to get that trip if there is a greater service capacity for those inter-county trips outside of the primary service area. So that one more, there we go. All right, this one's pretty solidly a medium need. All right, number 3, a sufficient number of qualified drivers to serve Waco and McLennan County. So this was an issue that came up with through Waco Transit. They said, we're not getting enough qualified drivers. And this is not an issue that's limited to Waco by any means. This has been a national issue. We're seeing it in other places too. We can't get enough drivers. We don't get enough qualified drivers, or they don't stay very long. And what that means is if they have services they'd like to implement, they can't do it. Or they may be asking their drivers to work a lot of overtime. And that burns drivers out if they're constantly having required overtime. All right, we picked up a 9th person somewhere. Great. So everybody's locked in. So obviously a high priority on this one. Alright, number 4. So need number 4 is reliable access to transportation within intra and inter-county trips within the primary service area, within the 5 rural counties. And I know you're thinking, well, isn't this just the one I already answered in the first question? The difference is we're calling this reliable access. This means that somebody can reasonably expect that they can always get that trip. So if we have somebody from Fairfield, for example, who needs to make a regular trip into Mejia to attend class at Navarro College, Mejia. So if they're signing up for an in-person class, they need to know that they have transportation to get to that class. And it may be twice a week, it may be 3 times a week. But, sometimes without knowing that you have that transportation available, that you're going to be able to get that trip, you don't sign up for those things. You don't register for those classes.
Kevin, can you judge it so you get signed in to Minty and
Yes.
get your phone?
So you're going to go to the website menti.com, MENTI.com, MENTI.
Dang, John, I spell. Minty, but
Take T.I. There you go. That's what's right here.
alright.
There you go. And enter, what's the code?
The code is at the top of the screen, 65911689. And I think it'll just have you join us where we are now, and that's fine. Alright, here it is. Alright, I think we still have one person that hasn't locked in their vote for this one.
There's somebody voted twice the last time.
Well, I showed 10 active and one
There it is.
There it is,
It was me.
okay.
I hit it and didn't submit.
Oh. All right.
It thought I was gonna change my mind.
All right, so moving on to the next need, number 5. This won't sound very familiar, but this is reliable access for transportation for inter-county trips outside the primary service area. So the example here is if somebody from Freestone County needs to travel to Palestine for regular treatment of a health condition. That may determine where your doctor is. Do I go to Waco or do I go to Palestine, even if Palestine's closer? Can I get there? So that's kind of the thing we're talking about here. All right, so pretty consistent. This one is looking like a medium priority. Thank you. All right, number 6. This is weekend service for service within and between the counties in the primary service area for the 5 rural counties. And what this might look like is if somebody from Groesbeck wants to shop at the Walmart in Mejia or Tig on Saturday.
Or T. Where? If you're out of county and don't know how they say it?
All right, one more.
Behave, Judge Elliott.
No.
There we go.
I did not.
All right, so very mixed results on this one. All right, number 7 is coordinated service between other transportation providers for service outside of the primary service area for the 5 rural counties. So what this might look like, somebody from Rosebud needs to travel to Temple for a medical appointment. Rather than taking them all the way into Bell County, Blue Transit would take them to a transfer point with Bell County and meet up with Hill County Transit District and then finish their trip on that bus. And what this does by keeping the Blue Transit vehicles in the primary service area is it essentially increases capacity because they're not having to spend the rest of the day running down to Temple or waiting for somebody or whatever they need to do. it keeps them in that primary service area. Alright, we're still missing one. There we go. Alright, another bit mixed here. Need number 8 is pretty much the same thing, but for McLennan County instead of, the rural counties. So this would be coordinated service between other transportation providers for service outside of McLennan County. So
is that McLennan County going out?
yeah. So like somebody from McGregor needs to go to Temple. So
Alright.
they would meet, McLennan Rural would meet Hill County Transit District at a transfer point.
Yeah.
Finish their commute. Or their trip. Okay, another mixed bag here. Yeah, we really appreciate all the feedback we're getting, so thank you for doing that. Alright, we're about halfway through. Number 9 is more affordable transit fares for travel within the rural counties. Now, I have to say that the transit fares in the rural counties are not exorbitant.
Exactly. I'm
but-
like, but you ready? But here's the thing, if you don't have $2, they're not kicking you off the bus. So, I'm sorry, you can't get lower than 0.
Good point.
I mean,
Yeah, I mean, some folks, they do have they can't afford that $2. It sounds like they're living right.
as they bring on a pack of cigarettes.
One
Sorry,
more.
I'm with it. That's true.
Alright. Very low priority. Okay. Number 10, same thing. People say, oh, too expensive. I mean, Waco Transit has reduced fares already. McLennan Rural is similar to Blue Transit. There aren't reduced fares, but they're not super high. But you still have folks complaining and saying, I can't afford this.
Mhm.
There we go. Alright. Okay, so number 11 is greater awareness of transportation options within the 5 rural counties. So a lot of us, well, maybe not a lot, but several of the rural residents we spoke with, they said, well, I don't know I didn't know there was any transportation. Or they see the bus and they think, oh, it's for seniors, or oh, it's for persons with disabilities, or it's for someone besides me. They don't realize it's a general public service. And so this is just saying, we need greater awareness of what those options are in the rural county. One more. There we go. Alright. And then the next one is greater access to travel training for persons in the 5 rural counties. So once you know about the service, some people still may not be very familiar with how they use it, because if your idea of, well, a bus is something you just go when you get on and it takes you where you need to go. Well, for a service like Blue Transit, there's some stuff you have to do in advance. You gotta call, you gotta make a reservation. You may have to negotiate for time. And some folks, this is completely new to them. And so,
And I'll be the first one to say, in rural, I got flip phones.
yeah.
So you can't sometimes jump on. And the ones that may have a need or a cheap phone, cause that's what they can afford. That is, for me, you have to be able to do it old school,
Yeah.
which they can do, but sometimes they don't realize it, that, you don't have to have a smartphone.
Right. That's a good point. It's, you always hear about, oh, do stuff through the app, and if you don't have a phone that has app,
Here's the QR code.
but you don't need an app.
Doesn't work on mine.
All right. Okay, so high and medium here. All right, number 13 is increased partnerships with and support for transportation from stakeholders in the 5 rural counties. what might that look like? That could be, contributions towards Blue Transit service, some increased contributions. That could be new providers that are able to take some of the burden off of, Blue Transit in some locations. So there's a lot of ways that could look differently, but it's all about increasing the capacity through additional funding or additional services. It's definitely a high priority. And we'll say the same thing about that for rural McLennan County. Increased partnerships with and support for transportation and stakeholders. Either more funding and more contributions to, financial contributions to McLennan Rural, or other organizations that can take up some of the burden. All right.
And on both of those, businesses can make a small contribution, which we can take it a long way.
Mm.
And I just use Diabetes Center. Quite a few of their clientele use that transportation system, and they do nothing.
Right.
I can speak for my family.
Right, and so, one of the things that I was gonna say a little bit later is, right now we're just defining the need, but we're not defining about what solutions are gonna look like.
No, I'm just,
No,
but that's,
you have a very good point, that there's a lot of different ways that this kind of thing would
Correct.
look.
because you make how much on all sorts of stuff, and you go, well, $10,000. And you go, well, $10,000 to you and me, pretty big. But when you're talking about a multi-million-dollar business and how most of them get it that way, clientele-wise, I'm sorry, that's a drop in the bucket.
Yeah, and so kind of what feeds into this for these two questions is also education. Because we provide this service, you don't have to.
Correct.
You don't have to provide a transportation service because you get to use ours. We see that a lot of times in more urbanized areas where they have a pretty robust fixed route service, and the schools say, hey, we want to have our students ride the public bus, so we don't have to provide school busing. And a lot of the transit operators are like, yeah, that's, see how much money we're saving you? You need to give us some of that.
Great, and it's one of the few times that government can actually, a governmental type thing,
Right.
can actually do it more efficiently
Yeah,
than private.
because it's part of an existing network.
Correct.
All right, number 15, improved access to comprehensive service information for persons in the 5 rural counties. So one of the challenges that I think a lot of folks have in getting information is there's no one resource that has all of the information. So if you go on to Blue Transit's website, for example, one of the things it says right now is travel to certain secondary counties on certain days. But it doesn't tell you what those days are. And I don't know if that's out of necessity because, hey, it would normally be Tuesday, but we don't have a driver on Tuesday that could make that trip, or what. So it would require somebody to call in. And for some folks, that's not a problem because that's how they get all their information. But for other folks who might be new to the service, they can't get full information without having to talk to somebody. And so this would be providing more comprehensive service information. I think we're still missing one. No, there we go. All right, and then the last slide would be the same thing, comprehensive service information for rural McLennan County. And it's basically the same situation. There is a web page that has basic information and who to contact, but again, it's not comprehensive. And the more comprehensive information somebody has, the more they can evaluate whether this is appropriate for them or will get them to where they need to go. One more? Alright. Okay, so that is all of our questions.
Kathy, can you please remind everybody what we are going to do
Yes.
with this poll?
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take the responses from this, we're gonna take it back, we're gonna calculate a mean rating. Basically, we, high is 3 points, medium is 2 points, low is 1 point, and so we can come up with an average number based on that. And each of these needs will get a numerical rating, between 0 and 3.
And Kathy, should I send that out to stakeholders since participation here is low and have them complete that, separately?
Yes, we can absolutely do that. We'll wait to do we will wait to do all the math. We'll wait to calculate the mean ratings until we get feedback, but we'll wanna keep it a fairly narrow window.
Yeah.
Let me. I wanna go ahead and do this before I forget. Make sure. Alright. So we are gonna go back to our presentation. We can get that up on there. Thank you for all your input. Like I said, we really appreciate your input on all of this. And we'll see about getting a little bit more input from some stakeholders, and we'll add that to what you guys did here. So if you've already taken the poll here and you get an email about filling it out again as part of the stakeholder list, don't do it. Just, you've already got it.
Unless you really want your opinion to be up.
Well, there is that. All right. So, next activity. So we prioritized our needs, and what we do with that is we put that into the interim plan that then goes off to TechStot, and they review it for a while, and then they come back to us, and then we start developing goals and strategies and projects. So what we're looking at doing right now is developing a methodology to prioritize those projects and strategies that we're gonna come up with in a few months. So what we're gonna do here is identify what is most important to this group. So those criteria will be used for prioritization. So it can be things like it leverages existing resources, it improves access to resources, or a strategy addresses an identified need. We can look at what the overall impact is, whether funding is identified as part of the strategy, how sustainable it is, whether it expands an existing service, whether it improves the regional network, and then we'll determine whether that criteria should be weighted. So these are examples of potential criteria, and you guys may have some other things that you feel are important to be considered. So I'm gonna switch to another view here, and I would like you guys to tell me what, we're just gonna make a list right now. We can ignore the column that says rank, but I'd like to hear what do you think is important to consider when we're talking about prioritizing projects? Let's get a list.
Ease of access to making the appointment. And what you had just mentioned is, which is a subset of that, which is understanding Falls, or anybody, only makes trips to Temple Tuesday, Thursday. I
Okay.
go to McLennan County Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So that way, when they're making appointments, they know they need to make Tuesday, Thursdays, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Whatever, if there's a piece of that, they need to understand the limitations,
Right.
because there's only X number of buses, there's only what that limitation is, or what the set is, like
Right.
you
You
had
only go
said.
to Temple on Tuesday, so make your
Correct.
appointment on Tuesday.
Right,
But I think you have to start off, the number one thing you have to start off with is the funding. The funding has to be there. And we have to work within those parameters of the funding we have. Because I would love to go 7 days a week and run as much as I possibly could. But pretty much everybody on the phone, sitting in here knows that that's not gonna happen. The funding is just not there. So,
Right.
yes, the service is super important to everybody that uses it, to be able to expand it. And I think the last one on that other list was whatever helps the coordination. There was something, I don't know what that last
Improve
one.
the regional transportation
Transportation
network.
for, yes, that network, that's a big one. We get the coordination down or improve the regional network, then that opens up more service to
Other places.
other places.
Right.
Can that still be a priority? I mean, that's still a big priority.
That should be, yeah. I think
I
that's
think it
major.
should be priority number one, yeah.
Well,
Funding
has to be-
funding has to be one.
You fund, then you got a regional.
But, because for me, it's, like you had said, we're looking for partners, which falls right underneath that the funding piece, because that makes more trips when you're talking rural, because Waco's, I don't know that one, but, you know, my biggest complaint, I can't go, I have an appointment, and I'm like,
Right, does anybody online have any input?
I was gonna say, this is Janet, Waco Transit. I mean, in regards to the funding, I think this is again one of those things that we have to bring up to TechStop to discuss some type of assistance or what program it would fall under to help with those, like, other county trips that we're connecting with other agencies. Because you don't want to go from your designated county, but you also don't want to leave one of your community members, stranded. So I don't know if it's like a discretionary type fund that they want to talk about or something, but I think it's something that we should be discussing with our, TechStop officials, that would help support those types of trips. Because me and Rep are more than happy to work together, but how do you pay for it? So, I mean, like always, it comes down to money, but
Right.
I agree. You don't want to cut service to your area though to provide a couple of trips to one person to Austin or San Antonio, like that's just a big thing.
Right. That's it.
One of the things.
Can you hear me?
we can now.
Is there any marketing model that you guys can look at that other counties are using? I just know that when you become overly dependent on federal funding, that's how you get back in the position of having to cut, because funding can be great sometimes and then it is reduced, and then you're constantly strategically planning around that. So are there other areas that are using some type of marketing method to engage the community to get funding that way, so that you're generating new revenue streams instead of trying to pump the same old one all the time?
There's a national, the RTAP, the National Rural Transit Association or whatever, they have quite a few resources you can pull over their website that has marketings and local match support, guides and things like that. Honestly, in this area though, it's really hard to get local match. I mean, even for Waco, we get very little local match contribution. I mean, unless me and Rec put together some type of campaign that we went out together, you know, helping or asking for it, I don't know. I mean, how do you allocate that? Like, do you allocate it based on population? Do you allocate it based on land mass? You know, like, how do you allocate that between the two agencies?
I'm thinking like, is there not a resource so much that way, which that's great, but is there another region that you know that's being funded through different funding streams that you could engage and learn from?
Heather, there probably are, and I'll go to HOTCOG, Sean Scott down in San Antonio. Several people have heard me say this. Sean can pick up a Kleenex and blow his nose and they give him money for it.
I remember you saying that.
His counties, his judges, his region down there, it amazes me. They just throw it at him. He was there Tuesday. He was at a meeting Tuesday and said, "Hey guys, I need," and they said, "Okay, here it is. There you go." And it was a lot of money.
He's also about 8 million people in his region.
Yes, you're right. Maybe, just maybe, I give on my buses for a small percentage, and hey, y'all can put it on there. But in the conversation, from what I'm understanding, we're headed more digital than we are headed putting stickers on the side of buses or on windows of buses like you see wraps now, which that makes a lot of sense. That's what people are looking at. And TV.
Yeah, our advertising money revenues have decreased significantly for the past 3 or 4 years. Every year we see a decrease.
So you go back to, Judge Elliott mentioned dialysis clinics. I don't know of a agency in the state that partners with dialysis clinics or that dialysis clinics helps out. But if you took that number, the number of people that we provide trips to from the state, throughout the state, away from out for dialysis, we wouldn't be providing hardly any trips, to be real honest with you. They just wouldn't, it's so, what do you do? It's fine in that sweet spot. I'm sure there's something there absolutely that nobody's looked at or nobody's thought about. And that's kind of why talking to Kathy and about stakeholders, it's like, please understand when we put this plan together, we sit down and we talk about this. Don't just come to the table with, oh, hey, my people need this.
Right.
We understand they need rides, but rides cost money to fit in that situation. How can you help out to get them those rides? Is another big part of this coordination and partnership stuff. So,
When you're thinking about cities and counties, it's not a mandated thing to fund. So then that automatically becomes not our responsibility, right?
Yep.
So.
Well, and here's the other one I was just thinking about, the VA. If I show up to an appointment and I say, and I fill out my slip, I can actually make money like I drove myself. They'll pay them by the mile. They can verify it. I haven't filled the slip out, but I guarantee they're not gonna ask them what their license plate number and everything else is. And like I said, for me, the VA. Where are you going? The VA. Cool. Let's start charging the VA. However we can do it. I go, VA has money. We're taking them. I just, because I'm just thinking VA. I know they pay for trips every time you go to the VA for an appointment. I could get paid. I hadn't filled out one of the slips. I'm like, but that's one of the things that they do. But doing that'd be that'd be a pain.
You have to talk to DC.
Well, that was my 2 cents.
Mr. Guy, did you have something?
Well, one of the things that I've discovered in trying to coordinate myself some trips across county lines and across multiple districts is a lot of these transit providers are complaining that it's the deadhead back that they're not getting paid for. So that regional coordination where if, Waco Transit takes me to Falls County, and then while they're there, they pick up a trip coming back this way, and Rep does the opposite way, that might help a little bit where there's that more coordination on some of these trips. You know, where Russ can have a vehicle in Waco and he can grab a trip from here to here and then zip back to his area and vice versa, and even with some of the surrounding districts. But it's gonna take a lot of coordination and a lot of everybody wanting to work together
Right.
to eliminate some of those deadhead, because that's, I think Rep would agree with me, that's where your big cost is those deadhead miles, right? And I think Jana would agree with that too, it's those deadhead miles where you're going without a passenger on the vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you get 2, 3, 4, 5 people on a vehicle, then through coordination, you can start actually not costing yourself so much money.
Right.
So that regional coordination needs to really, really work, and not just Waco and Blue Transit, but even when you're operating in Bell County or
Right.
the surrounding areas. That's just my 2 cents.
No, that's a very good point. And you're right, it would take a lot of coordination in some cases, but that does get me to start thinking. So I'm hoping that when it comes time to set up projects and strategies, that's something I can think on for a little bit.
And I see that because as a blind guy, the specialty doctors I need to go to are in Austin.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not an easy way to Austin using public transportation. And that's one of the things that I've discovered, or even going to Dallas, is there's not an easy way to get there. I mean, it's easier to fly to Dallas than it is to use any other form of transportation, as crazy as that sounds.
Yeah.
And so there needs to be a little bit better coordination. And that's my 2 cents, and I'll stop now.
And then I think too, Reality Resources, and what Red mentioned a few minutes ago, like other sources paying for things where you're working with those customers for their ride needs, that's gonna have its value. And I think the other piece too is we, for vocational rehabilitation side, customers with disabilities who travel, one of the things, if it ends up with funding and funding capacity, only has it where maybe it's available for consistent 2 or 3 days a week for somebody to go this county to McLean, this county to this county, then that may be in the marketing that this may be able to help you with part-time employment transportation needs, but we can't promise a full-time.
Right.
And I say that, and it doesn't necessarily sound optimistic, but sometimes you have to go with where your realities are at the time. Because we've had customers that call me, they've connected with Rep, and they had a job. Maybe they had a job in Whitney and they're going to Hillsborough. They may be within county. And things changed on funding, and they can't get to work that following day because the route wasn't going to be available on the funding cost. And that's going to be a logistic thing to kind of consider, and I think in doing this on what the plan looks like with funds. But we're not alone, and I mean, you're in the McKinney area down the road from you guys. There's 5 cities looking to hunt DART in the next month or 2, as you're aware. And they're, big routes, and you got Highland Park, you got Plano, you got, Richardson, Farmers Branch, and I mean, these are none of us near us, but if you go up there for a meeting and you do DART, it's gonna affect you if you're in a hotel in Dallas and you gotta be in a meeting in Frisco, you may be doing Uber. So it'll, just as an urban markets, things are shifting, whatever the reason that was up there. I think it was the participation cost on the revenue from the other cities.
Yeah.
But the same thing I think is for this and the rural transit side, where if realistic resource capacities are what they are, when we market that out, then if it ends up being, it's gonna be something that may be a few days a week availability, and that's what we can handle, that's fair. It may not be the menu on the table of what the length of the week would be available, but if it's a Monday to Wednesday, or if it's a Wednesday to Friday service, whatever that might be, then we go with it, because we gotta go with what the funds could handle fairly.
And you communicate that to
Yes.
people.
And in that way, we communicate what's real, then we communicate what's true.
Right. And people can plan.
Yeah, then they shift accordingly. If they have a job, they may be able to say, okay, I can get to that job Wednesday through Friday. I was working on Monday to Wednesday. I have to communicate with my employer, and I work out something to do it Wednesday to Friday.
Right, or I can get another ride.
Or do a plan B for those other days.
Right.
Exactly. And that's the side, I say that on the perspective, that's the side where I work every day, when I'm trying to help customers get to their job, because at the end of the day, folks here in the room that run into this, or if you hire and fire people, always a better term for firing, but sometimes what it's called, is if you don't show up, then even in, we're past the COVID, work at home and a lot of that stuff now, you don't show up enough times, you will be replaced, because they need you to show up. They need they need a body in the seat, they need somebody on the line, and they need that person in the job. So if that person can't get to the job, they're gonna make sure they need to do those plan Bs, plan Cs, so that's what we have to let them know.
Right.
Frank, you got anything from school side of that?
No, our latest challenge, quite frankly, which started last semester, is just getting our students to our other campuses. As our ag program has grown and our vet tech program has grown, which is 10 miles away from main campus, and our ESEC registration in criminal justice has grown, we're having trouble getting students that might come to campus, get dropped off on main campus, they can make their classes, but then they got classes out on those offsite and they can't get there. We had 2 students last semester that dropped because they couldn't get to the classes. And another one was having to call an Uber. Well, that was not sustainable, so from the college's perspective, we are having challenges. We saw them last semester. I think that's going to continue to grow as our programs grow in those areas. And so that is quite frankly our biggest challenge. We give from the college, we provide cards to students to get them to campus, from Waco Transit, through our financial aid office and our business office. But it's the getting them to the Emergency Service Education Center and to our ag program, which is at the Highlander Ranch, is our ability. It was our largest Achilles heel right now. So it's not a lot of people, but it's enough that I actually started looking at it last semester, trying to figure out if the volume was there, that we could figure out a way to run a daily shuttle, maybe 2 or 3 times a day between all 3 campuses, kind of like Vader does. Numbers aren't there, obviously. We're talking less than 5. But for a community college, when you lose students, that's a big thing. So that's where I'm at.
All right, so let's see if we can kind of rank our list here, see if we can get this down to some key criteria. And what I'm hearing is that funding is number 1, whether it is working within existing funding or identifying new funding sources. So I'm gonna kind of take these and summarize them on the right.
Now, here's my question. You got funding available and identifying new funding. And tell me if I would say funding available is number 1.
Okay.
I would probably go identifying new funding or existing. That I would think that the third one down is the number 1, where, or however you want to tweak that.
You're right, so
Yeah,
basically, it works with what we already have.
correct.
What's the funding that's available? And then maybe number 2 is
New funding.
we can identify new funding for it.
Yes. Because
Whatever
that
it is.
determines everything else.
Yes, so one of those needs to be true.
Correct.
For it to be prioritized.
Correct.
Okay. And then, Rep, you said that you felt like the next one up was the improves regional transportation network.
Yes, because, why, that's what it says, because why are we here? The coordinated plan. Coordination is why we're here, and better coordination improves that regional transportation network.
Gets more people than you need to go, and better utilizes the limited money you have to do it.
Correct.
And the partnerships almost
It
falls
goes
up
into,
to identifying the new funding.
right, and I think a lot of these, on the left side, they kind of fall into these three things. The other one that I think was brought up was, the access to information,
Yes.
or maybe effective communication.
Yeah.
That might be a better way to phrase it.
Because really that hits the top two.
Right. Alright, so now the question is, we have 4 criteria here. Do we want to weight them in any way, or do you think these are all equal?
Alright, I'm gonna go. However you wanna percentage them, I go. Important, yes, but funding outweighs all.
If you don't have the funding, the rest of it don't matter.
Yes,
Right.
You can dream big, but if you can't pay for it,
correct.
You can coordinate all you want, but if there's no money.
There's no water, the fruit's not gonna grow.
yeah.
And now, and I'm not saying, cause effective communication is what funding you have, you're making it easier on the customer.
Yeah.
I go, but when you're talking about, that effective communication is also right there with regional
Right,
transportation.
It's, you know, it
Because for
comes
me,
together.
3 and 4 almost blend,
Right,
even though separate, but they blend, because if I come to Waco and understand the system, I can run around
right,
and potentially, all right, I'm here, it takes me, so you get dropped off downtown Waco and I end up at the mall, or, so,
Right.
you know.
so I think, kind of what we're saying is, effective communication does improve regional coordination.
Correct.
But regional coordination is not the result only of effective communication. So that's why we want to keep them separate. But I agree, they definitely are related. Well,
I do appreciate Jana's remark about identifying new funding and,
Mhm.
you know, the grass is always greener on the other side. We're a small organization, so we look at Waco and go, well, Waco's flush with money. And she communicates clearly that they have the same difficulties, it's just on a different scale.
Right,
And, you know, I just got back from Europe. It works over there. That's because we blew everything up during World War II and you built a system that is functional. We have very independent people in this country that want to go to point A and point B on their timetable,
Right.
not on the fixed timetable. And that's a huge factor of when you get to move.
yeah. All right, so this has been some really good, input here. And for those of you who came in late, Stephanie is recording this, so I get to go back and listen to everything again, which will be really great. So what I'd like to do here is kind of step away with this information, and then I will come back to you with a proposed methodology for rating the projects and strategies. And again, I'll get that to Misty and when we get the need ratings for the need prioritization, and she'll send that out so that everybody knows about it. All right. All right. So what our next steps are. So our next step is actually the next meeting. I'd like you guys to adopt the prioritized list of needs and the prioritization methodology that I'm gonna provide to you. And so this is just so we can, you know, cover all our bases, that when we present the plan to TxDOT, they can see that this body has approved and adopted that stuff. The interim coordinated plan goes to TxDOT by February 27th. And then they have about a month during which they get to review them, and they're gonna be getting like, what, 28 plans, however many?
Yeah.
Region
24,
24, or something like that.
Yeah.
They're gonna be getting all these plans at once, because all of them are due by February 27th. So we'll probably have about a month where not a lot is going on. What TxDOT then is gonna do is they'll get back to us, they'll advise us if there's anything that needs to be addressed before we move on to the next step. And then we'll get that addressed. But the next step is defining goals that are based on the needs we identified, and then developing projects and strategies that address those needs and goals. And then we'll use the prioritization methodology to kind of, rank them within the context of the coordination plan. Then the draft, so we'll have another workshop, similar to this one, around June. We'll work with Ms. Fiona to figure out exactly when that takes place. And then the draft final plan will go out for public review during August and September. It has to be out for a month. And then we'll look at adopting the final plan after that review period. So it gets adopted, and then we do a few administrative things, and then we send it off to TxDOT. So TxDOT has, as I mentioned in prior meetings, TxDOT has, they've integrated a little bit more oversight in the process this time by having this interim plan submittal, so they can kind of see where everybody is and make sure they're on the right track. So hopefully that works well for us, and hopefully we get it back and they say, yes, you're doing great.
So you're good, we're good to go. Hey, did you get
Having never been through this particular process before, since it's new, it'll be interesting to see.
Okay. Okay.
We're ready?
All right. So I want to thank everybody for their participation today. Those of you that are here in person, those of you that are joining us via Zoom.
Yeah, that's fine. Just let me know when you're good to
If you have any questions, if you have any comments about either of the technical memos that you'd like to get to us, you can either email me directly, or you can send them to Missy and she'll get them to me. And we really like as much feedback as we can get. So I encourage you to submit questions, submit comments, anything about this. So I think that's it.
We're good. Thank you very much.
All right. So thank you to everybody who joined us on Zoom. We appreciate your participation, even I can't see you right now.
And Judge, make sure you sign in.
Yeah,
I'll-
John.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Sorry. I sure will.
I'm not sure either.
No, but I will.
Just trust me. If I'm right, my name on there, you'll like it.
You just making around.
Yeah, see my name for years, yeah, we were in a meeting earlier, weren't we?
Yeah, we saw you at lunch.
Yep.
Jonathan,
Jeff?
you fixing to leave?
Thanks, sir.
You know, I'd love to hang out, but
I'm sitting here. I got your picture here,
Yeah, you're in.
okay? We're gonna use your picture Thursday. Will you come in and be there?
I may not be.
You may not be, if you are here, I mean, press night. School picture day?
All right, I appreciate it.
Hey guys, they're having their executive committee meeting next Thursday, so I
I like
RSVP'd
yoga,
for
though.
that.
It is